Staphylococcus is a very common genus of bacteria. They often exist naturally on our skin. They can be on doorknobs, tabletops. They're pretty much everywhere. Staphylococcus aureus is a particular species that can often cause different various types of infections, from skin rashes to food poisoning. And so we hear it a lot in the field of microbiology. Certain characteristics about Staphylococcus: number one, it's a gram-positive bacterium. When growing on just regular nutrient agar plates, it's usually white to slightly yellow in color. It's going to depend on the particular species. One unique thing about Staphylococcus is that it is very salt tolerant. Most bacteria cannot grow or survive in a high salt concentration, but Staphylococcus can. When you look at the morphology of it under the microscope, it has this classic cluster. It looks like a bunch of grapes. This is especially true if you take the sample from a liquid culture. Sometimes you still see it from a solid culture, like if you take it off a petri dish. But it's just classic grape. Looks like that bunch of grapes. It's gram-positive. That's probably going to be Staphylococcus. To grow it, we often will grow it on a media that's called mannitol salts agar. This is both a selective and a differential medium. It is selective in that, as the name implies, it has a high salt concentration, so usually Staphylococcus is the only species that can grow on it. So you see growth on an MSA plate, which is what we call the mannitol salts agar, it's probably going to be Staphylococcus. So that's how it's selective. The differential aspect of it has to do with whether or not it can ferment mannitol. It does contain mannitol, as the name implies. It also has the pH indicator phenol red in the media. So if a particular bacteria is growing on it and it's able to ferment that mannitol and produce acid as a byproduct because it has the phenol red as a pH indicator. If you remember, phenol red is red at pH 7 or more alkaline conditions, but under acidic pHs, it will turn yellow. So if that bacteria ferments the mannitol and produces acid as a byproduct, the media is going to turn yellow. If it is a non-mannitol fermenter, then the media will remain red. So this is an MSA plate, mannitol salts agar. There are two different species of Staphylococcus growing on it. Number one, you know they're Staphylococcus because they're actually growing on the plate. As we said, it's selective. The plate, normally the agar has this pinkish color to it. And so on this side, this particular species, it's actually Staphylococcus epidermidis. It's not Staphylococcus aureus. It cannot ferment the mannitol. It can grow, but it cannot ferment it and produce acid. Over here on this side, where you have the yellowish coloring, that is Staphylococcus aureus. This is where the differential aspect of the MSA plate comes into play, as I said, is whether or not it can ferment the mannitol. Staphylococcus aureus can ferment mannitol, producing acid. So if there's growth on the plate, it's Staphylococcus. If it's yellow, it is going to be Staphylococcus aureus.